When you think things couldn't get even more bizarre, well, they can. Some kids in schools in the UK are now identifying as animals, moons, as in sun and moon, even holograms. And unfortunately, it isn't as isolated as you might think, with one teacher at a Church of England school in East Sussex actually chastising a student for not respecting that another student wanted to be identified as a cat. Now, thankfully, common sense is not totally lost, with the woman dubbed Britain's strictest headmistress, Catherine Bourbon Singh, has called this out, putting responsibility back on parents and their unwillingness to set boundaries or take difficult decisions about parenting. Not to mention teachers, of course, who endorse this behaviour. Joining me now, education expert, senior research fellow at Australian Catholic University, Dr. Kevin Donnelly. Kevin, welcome as always. Great to have you on the program. I mean, I do like Catherine Bourbon Singh saying, yes, educators need to pull their heads in. This is absolute rubbish. But she's also saying, why are parents not in the gun here? They should not let it get to the point where, you know, little John or little Julie thinks they're a cat and they turn up to class and they want to, you know, drink milk out of a saucer and all this rot that's going on in the UK, but sadly in other Western countries like Australia.
You're right, Peter, and last year it happened in Brisbane, of all places, one of the girls' schools there, a very exclusive girls' school, and I wrote about it for The Spectator at the time. I mean, it's as though we've gone down the rabbit hole like Alice in Wonderland, where sanity no longer prevails. But when you look at what's happening to schools and society in general, where girls can be boys and boys can be girls, because apparently there is no such thing as biology. You can identify anywhere on the spectrum. It doesn't surprise me that you might find that some students want to be cats. The only problem I'd see, I taught for a number of years, is if the other students want to be dogs, and then you're in real trouble in the classroom.
How do we get to this position? I mean, I've interviewed Catherine Bourbon Singh here, and I've got a lot of admiration for her. She's written a terrific book about basically putting structure and you know, rule making back in the way we into schools and the way we teach children. But I mean, she seems like the only voice of sanity alongside your good self. I mean, how did we get to this position?
Firstly, you were right, Peter, about parents. They are their children's first educators. They should do more. Parents should do more. But as you know, and we've spoken about this, when you look at what's happened in education over the last 30, 40 years, the vibe, as the Prime Minister would call it, is very much about teachers no longer being authority figures. And we see that every day in schools, where parents complain about the noise, the disruption in the classroom, where we're ranked as one of the worst internationally in terms of disruptive classrooms. Part of the problem is that teachers in teacher training are not taught enough about discipline. The other issue is we've adopted all of these new age faddish ideas about classroom management, where you often find in primary schools, for example, you don't, or teachers are told you cannot have a desk at the front of the room because that is imposing on the students. You should let them take control. They call it self-agency, personalised learning, all this jargon. So often teachers don't have the right tools to do the job. They're not allowed to be authority figures.
You've written for The Spectator about how parents are also being kept in the dark when it comes to ways their child might identify, not just as cats and dogs, but obviously the gender issues that we talk about a lot on this show. What can you tell us?
Well, I was surprised when I did a bit of research. It came to mind after I read about Florida, where parents there were told, well, in fact, were not told that their daughter was being transitioned at school. The school kept the parents in the dark. The parents took it to court and lost, and now they're appealing. When I looked at Australia, it's also happening here. I've been talking to parents in Adelaide, South Australia. They're joining together. They're becoming a bit like parents in Florida and Virginia, where they want to become more active. It's complicated because when you look at the Commonwealth Education Department, their webpage, student wellbeing they call it, that actually has material that says parents need not be told if their child at school wants to change their pronoun, wants to dress in a different uniform when they're at school, wants to use toilets that are not their biological sex. So it's starting to happen in Australia too, and it's a great shame, especially for parents who are religious.
It is a great shame. I've got to jump in there because we're out of time, but we will look at The Spectator. Everyone's watching the show now. They're going to get the copy of The Spectator and get their head around this as you have. Thank you, Kevin, as always.